If your dog loves to go for walks in the park, but summer is rolling around and it is about to get all kinds of crowded in that park, there are a couple of things that you need to think through to make it more of a successful walk while avoiding most of, but maybe not all of, the crowds that are going to show up during the summer. The first is that you should absolutely plan your walks for early in the morning. Now, this is just a common sense thing because in the summer it gets really hot and it is going to potentially cause issues if you are walking a little bit later in the day, and it will very likely burn your dog's paws as they are walking on some of that concrete out there. So early morning means the sun has not been out as long. It is not as hot for you. It's not as hot for your fur-covered dog, and it's not going to potentially burn their feet as you're walking early. But going early also means less crowds because lots of people like to sleep in a little bit longer. A lot of people will wait until their kids get up to go to the park. And so it's going to be a lot less crowded early in the morning. And the earlier you go, the less people you will have to deal with. And the nicer the sunrise is or the early morning light for pictures, photos, fun, all of those things. So I cannot recommend early morning walks enough. Now, another thing that you need to be mindful of is what days are going to be the most crowded. During the summer, all the kids are out of school and all the moms and all the dads take the kids to the park for something to do. There will be different sections of the park that are going to be more crowded. So you want to make sure that as you're doing this, you are taking them on days that are less likely to be as crowded. On weekends, specifically on Saturdays, you will see a higher volume of people because there tend to be more sporting events. There will be baseball games and soccer games and basketball games, and like everybody goes to the park on the weekends. So weekends tend to be really, really difficult. I would definitely recommend skipping Saturdays in most locations. But you also have to take into consideration where the volume of people is going to be. In my park, you are going to see people with the athletic fields. You're going to see them in the big open picnic areas. You are not necessarily going to see them further back on the trails. So if you are going on a more crowded day or you arrive and all of a sudden you realize it is crowded there, sometimes you just have to get through the crowd, through those athletic fields, through the different picnic areas, to those trails where there will be less people. Now, that does not mean you're going to have wide open spaces to be doing things. I'm just saying there's going to be less people. I know specifically in my park, I have tried a couple of times, and I will never do it again, to go on weekends and to go on days that are a little bit more crowded or later in the day when it's a little bit more crowded. And it's almost impossible to walk on the path because people who are just there as spectators for the kids' sports or the different games that are going on, they just take up all the space. They'll set up their chairs on the concrete. They will put their little wagons there. It is impossible to get through to get to the trails. And in my parks, you can't get to the trails without getting through the crowds first. So sometimes you just have to push through, and you will have to think through what's going to work best for your dog. Not all dogs are going to be able to go through crowds. You might have some issues. If you are like walking through with a puppy stroller, back when I had little puppies, I would sometimes take them in strollers before they were allowed on the ground because they hadn't had their full vaccinations yet. And so that was really hard to get them through, but it also kept them safe getting them through that crowd. Your dog may be more reactive or less reactive. So depending on who your dog is and how they function, you have to do what is best for your dog. So you might just be able to push through and get to a place where you can do things. And then on your way back, hit those crowds again, depending on the time, depending on what's going on. But being mindful of staying away from those high volume areas is really helpful. If you have a park where you can access the more secluded areas without going through the heavily populated spaces, by all means, go to that parking lot. Start from that location. But if you can't, you just have to take into consideration where the best choice is to walk them. Now, with that in mind, you're going early in the morning, you're avoiding those high volume days, and you're avoiding the high volume locations whenever possible. And scoping this out before you bring your dog is usually a good advantage to you. You don't necessarily want to take your dog and discover this thing and have to figure out how to get through the crowd and get to the places you need to go. So, pay attention. Be mindful of these things, especially before school gets out, before summer hits, and before everybody shows up to go swimming, to picnic, to play in the basketball court, and all of those things. You want to be mindful of what areas you can get to and where you can get to areas without having to go through the normal pathways. Be smart about that. Now, we've also done videos on places you can take your dog to walk that are not park specific for when we end up in the summer and everybody's there and everybody's being crowded and not mindful of you and your dog and potentially stepping on or hurting your dog or whatever could potentially happen there. So we do have videos on alternatives to park walks. I'm going to go ahead and link that down below. But if you've got questions on how to navigate the world of taking your dog for those walks, because it's really important for us to do, go ahead and drop those down below and follow for daily videos helping you navigate the world of being a dog parent to level up to give your pup the best life possible. We'll see you in the upcoming episodes.